you. Hey, everyone.
Hey.
Hi. So a little over a year ago, in June of last year, my husband and I purchased a pandemic car. This was arguably a terrible idea. For one, he does not drive, and I barely drive. Like, I'm a licensed driver, but I've never, until last year, owned a car. So I'm not a great driver. Like, there was a lot of bumpers that went kissed in the beginning. But we were living in lockdown in Brooklyn with our kids, and I love my family, but I am not in love with my family all of the time. For example, there are only so many times my 5-year-old can fully bare butt moon my colleagues on a Zoom call before it's not cute anymore. And my daughter, who was 2, would just scream. She would scream if there were black dots on her pasta. The black dots were pepper. She would scream if her eggs weren't flat enough. She would scream if she didn't have her sleeping horn, which... For those of you that don't know, a sleeping horn is a unicorn horn that you strap to your head to sleep in. There was a lot of yelling at my house. And outside was terrifying. For any of you that lived in New York City at the time, we were just hearing constant sirens. The news was terrible. We were getting mixed messages on masks. And I happened to live 2 doors down from a funeral parlor. You're jealous, all of you in Beacon, life in Bushwick. And one morning I looked out on the street, and instead of the cars parallel parked against the curb, by the way, shout out to all of their owners, because it's not a skill we're born with, it's a skill we have to learn. There were hearses perpendicular to the curb, half on the curb, so that they would all fit to service my neighborhood business. Things were not going well. It felt like the walls of our home were closing in on us, and they were never going to stop. So my sister and my father, who live a more suburban lifestyle, convinced me to buy a car. And I bought a car, and I mean, honestly, it was like really awesome. No one told me that a car is just a room of one's own, made of metal and wires. So I'm the only driver, so I would just get in it and primal scream, and I could. And I loved the fact that when I did have to take my kids somewhere, it's like the one place where you're not only, it's okay to, but you actually legally have to restrain your children. So it was fucking great. But the best thing about it was that we rediscovered the beach. We also, like John, we love the beach. My husband and I have been going to the Rockaways, the beaches in Queens and New York City, for years. And when we had kids, we would just strap one kid to us or put another kid in the stroller and take them up and down steps. We'd take 3 subways to the beach and wouldn't blink. But we did decide during the pandemic, during the throes of the pandemic, that was slightly frivolous to subject our family to that much risk just to anxiety snack, like at a coast. So we didn't do it in the beginning, but we got the car and we drive out and we go to Jacob Riis Beach. There's all this parking, we roll out, and I remember the first day, my husband and I sat on a blanket with a bag of Cheetos and watched our kids chase each other with shovels, and we felt like our shoulders went down and our breathing got better for the first time in months. And we realized the key to this, the key to getting through all of this, was getting the fuck out. And we got home and we got on a Zoom happy hour with some of our other parent friends. All of them were also living in yelling houses. There were a lot of yelling houses in the Bushwick-Ridgewood area, and we were like, we've cracked it. We figured it out. We just have to go somewhere that is not our homes. Let's do it. Let's get a house. We'll do a really intense quarantine. We won't see anyone but our family. We won't get any deliveries. We won't go in any building with walls that is not our home. We will do anything because it will be so good. We will feel this amazing feeling that we just felt at the beach. It will be the best week ever. And everyone was like, it will, yeah, let's do it. Everyone was game, and even the thought of us gave us all a lift. So we all go into this lockdown. We're eating like the corners of our refrigerator. We have no food. We haven't gotten anything. Doesn't matter. The person who introduced me and my husband, our best friend in the world, got married, and we were like, we will toast you in 3 weeks. See ya. Avoided everyone. But a few days before we leave, we decide we need our fix. We need one more beach day. We know we can do it. We know we can do it safely. So we put the kids in the car, and my husband and I drive up to the parking lot at the beach, and it's been free this whole time. But today, they've started charging, and we're like, oh, fuck, okay. Because we don't have any cash. We haven't used cash in weeks, and I'm like going through my head, we're digging through the car, we have like $1 between it doesn't work. And in my head, I'm like, do you think they take my Delta Amex at this beach? And then because I'm a monster, I'm like, will I get miles? Will I ever travel again? And then I come back and I go into my COVID calculator brain that we all have at this point, and I'm like, I can pull up, I can crack the window, I can slide the credit card through, and then they can slide it back, I'll let it drop, I'll pour Purell on it, and no one will die, I don't think. And I pull up, and they don't take a credit card at your local beach, and so the ranger has me pull down the window to explain to me that I have to leave and go to an ATM and come back with cash. And the whole time I realize that she's talking to me, I have both of my hands over my mouth and nose, and I'm holding my breath because I'm so fucking thrown by looking at a stranger in the eye, and I've forgotten about masks and everything else. So we get out, and inside of me, I'm completely freaking out because this would be normal in any other time. We would just drive to a bodega, go to an ATM, and come back, but we can't go to a bodega because a bodega has walls and it's not our home. Or we'd street park, but it's a really hot, beautiful Saturday in New York City. Everyone else has had this idea, there's no parking. Or we'd go home, but we're not going home because that is where the yelling is. So I'm trying to hide my freak out from my kids, and I'm like vacillating between like which of my tools in my tool belt for hiding my rage from my children I should pull from. One of them is when I'm driving and someone cuts me off and I have road rage and I want to yell. I yell, but I yell like parenting phrases. Like I'll yell like, "That's not kind!" Or like, "Think about making better choices!" But I can't do that because my husband's going to completely see through it. So I go to my other thing, which is just a sing-song voice. It's like simmering rage. And listen, I understand that I'm not fooling anyone, but I hope in the subsequent inevitable therapy that comes for my children, their therapist will help them see how hard their mother tried. So I look at my husband, and at this point I'm so like full of rage that he doesn't drive and that he gets to be the one like Googling a solution and I have to be the one actually driving the car. So he's like typing slowly with his thumbs and I'm like, "Honey, Google ATM, Rockaway Beach, outside." And he looks at me like I have two heads. Like, obviously Yelp does not have an option for alfresco banks in Queens. Like, that's not a thing you can find on Google. So we start driving, and just as I expected, there are no parking spaces on the street. All of the streets are parked up. In fact, they're so parked up that the locals in Rockaway have started to make handmade signs that say $10 or $20 cash to park in our driveway, which I love a hustle, but that does not work for me today. So we're driving, and the energy of the car is shifting, like the whole mood of the car. My husband and I are very generally good with like sickness, health, rich report, blah, blah, blah. But the pandemic has turned us into flesh husks of the people that we used to be. And sometimes we become bad versions of ourselves that turn on each other. And that's what's happening. So I'm mad at him because he can't produce from Google a solution to this like old tale as old as time New York City problem of parking. And he's mad at me because I am screaming at fire hydrants. He thinks that they're an essential part of our urban infrastructure, and I think that they're metal fucking assholes that are taking all of my parking spaces. And we can't seem to see, we don't see eye to eye on this. Meanwhile, my children have sensed that I am furious and he is furious and that there is no beach. So they've accelerated and they've amplified their repeated requests for snacks because my husband and I are not the only people in our family who anxiety snack. It's a thing between the four of us. So it's getting worse and worse and worse. And suddenly the car is no longer this like place of freedom for me. This is like place to get away. This place that is this thing that is saving us. It is this box that is smaller than our home that I am still trapped in. And now these walls are closing in on us. So about a half hour in, no parking space to be found. My husband looks at me and he's like, "We need to call it, Kate. We need to go home. We'll go through the freezer, we'll find some popsicles or something, but like, we can't just keep driving around like this. And I was like, we are not going home. We are not going back to that place. I will not turn this car around. And he's like, ooh, and it's getting worse and worse, and the sun is just beating through our window, and he's just driving past entrances to beaches that in the old day, if we were just there on our feet with strollers, we could walk right out. But now we have this stupid car we have to get rid of. And finally, we turn the corner, and we're underneath the subway, and my husband looks at me, and he puts his hand on the door, and he was like, you know what? Then I'll just go. I'll just take the train home. And I looked at him, and I was like, what? And then in my head, I'm thinking, you're gonna bail? You're gonna bail on this family? I am not in love with this family right now, but I need you to love us right now, or I will kill you. But I don't say that, because I can say something much simpler. I say, no, you can't get out. Because if you get out and you get in that subway, it has walls. And you will be breaking quarantine. And you will miss the best week ever. Wow. Checkmate. So he takes his hand slowly off the door. And everyone in my family sort of gets that it's time to be quiet. And the four of us drive around in our tiny room of our own until we reset. A couple of days later, we drive up a gravel path to a house in the middle of in the middle of nowhere and park next to our best friends' cars. And we run inside and we tackle those people. And we hug them so hard we feel their shoulders drop. We feel our breath still. We get to be away, but we also get to be together. And that week, we all hugged so much. And no bumpers were kissed. Thank you.
Kate Tellers.